Bill McDonald was the most affable fly fisher I have ever met, ever.
Bill was a gem of a human being and just a gentleman. You know, always nice, always courteous. You know, just, I heard him do it to other people, but it's always interesting. When you see him and you go up to shake his hand, he'd go, "Fine, and how are you?" You know, he'd answer the question before you even asked it.
You know, he had a lot of stories to tell. He'd keep you laughing and everything. And he never, you weren't a stranger to him when you walked up to him.
Like pretty much everybody in the club that has joined in the last 20 years, Bill's the first face that you saw. When you came to your first meeting and walked in the door, there was Bill there to greet you.
That was one of his favorite things to do, because he loved to talk to people.
Yeah, Bill did like to talk. He never at a loss for words, and I never heard him say anything bad about anybody.
Bill McDonald was the face of AFF for almost a generation. He was almost certainly the first face you saw the first time you came to a meeting. He wanted you to always feel welcome, like you had found your people, like you'd found your place of people who shared a passion for fly fishing.
And I remember walking into the door, and he literally jumped up out of his chair and said, "What are you here for?" and took me to the table I needed to sit at. And I noticed every time after that, he'd make a point to say hello. He'd make a point to, when the meeting was over, come over and just say, "You're glad you were here." So after I'd been at the meetings a while, I noticed he did that with everyone.
Big personality. I remember going into a meeting, and he would see you and he'd say, "What you know, kid?" And he always said that. And I'd say something like, "Takes a big dog to weigh 100 pounds. And he'd go, "Hey, you're right."
Well, you know, in a lot of ways, he kind of was the face of the club, because he was the one constant. You know, the board members changed, presidents changed, the different people who were standing up in front talking changed, but Bill was the one who was always there when you got there.
But what Bill and I did, and we loved it, was we ran the welcome tables at the events, at the banquets, at the one fly, at the little things like that, and we would greet people and take registrations and take admission, and we were a team, and it was so much fun.
Bill McDonald was the Arkansas Fly Fishers membership coordinator for as long as anyone could remember. It was his front row seat to meeting and greeting old and new members, and led him to volunteer at every club event.
Whenever we were at the veterans thing, we were teaching the vets, and he would take extra time with someone who's having trouble casting, and he'd just spend time with that guy until he was casting good, and somebody else might have gave up on him. The guy was really having trouble, and Bill stuck with him.
If the current's going this way, your line starts to get in front of your indicator.
Right.
You just give it a little flip.
And he didn't leave him until the guy learned to cast, and he knew what to do. You know, everybody has their little stories they tell over and over, and Bill had this one where he talked to, whenever we talked about what flies were good on the Little Red, he was, I don't know if this friend he had, I don't know if he exists or not, but he'd always say, this guy said, if you can use
I used to have a buddy here in Arkansas. He said you can fish the Little Red River with anything you want, as long as it's a sow bug.
The Bill McDonald laugh was a constant at our gatherings. In 2020, Bobby Cheatham and Bill were honored for lifetime achievements and sent a greeting to a friend who couldn't make the meeting.
Hey, Chuck, how are you?
Chuck, how you doing?
You old rascal.
Name a favorite place to fish, and Bill would say the San Juan. For over a decade, Bill led club fishing trips to the San Juan River in New Mexico.
The last float that I made with Bill, he caught what he said was the biggest trout that he ever caught. It was a huge fish, and it was about that long, you know, and the guide got it in, and he says, "Bill, you want to hold it and take a picture of it?" You know, I said, "No, I want to get that fish back in the water."
He had a rock up there at the flats on the San Juan that he could go up there and he'd sit down if he wanted to and fish, you know, right out there in the middle of the flats. And but we had a lot of fun fishing. He would just enjoy being around.
From the river to the diner to the road trip, And back home at the club meetings, Bill became not just the membership coordinator, but the director of fellowship. He turned newcomers and strangers into fishing club members and friends.
He is always full of jokes and always laughing, and just the most happy-go-lucky guy I ever had met.
But when COVID came and the club turned to virtual meetings, it wasn't easy for our front man, but he gave it a good try.
I've got a picture of it. I did a screen capture. I actually have the picture of that. It's like he's kind of peering over the top of the wall. That's what I always thought about it. And then he'd just start laughing and his head, you can see his head go up and down there.
That hearty laugh. It's what so many of us will remember. That and his love for fly fishing. From the earliest days, Bill preferred to be the photographer, capturing his friend's success. But we know he was in good standing at his little old fishing club.
Yeah, sure miss him. Sure miss seeing him at the stuff, you know. Some people you just think are going to be there forever, and none of us are, but he was one that you thought would be there forever.
Every time I go up to the San Juan River and I go up to the upper flats, I'll see that rock over there.
When we were at the service, we saw just how big Bill's family was. Cousins and uncles and nephews and nieces. But it made us realize that he had two families and that we were fortunate to be part of that second family. And if you knew anything about Bill, he was proud of both of those families.